On the morning of March 19, 1997, a helicopter lifted off from a small airstrip in Indonesia, heading into the jungle. On board was Michael de Guzman, the geologist who had recently announced to the world the discovery of 71 million troy ounces of gold buried beneath the rainforest below. A discovery so large that Bre-X, a Canadian mineral company, exploded from a worthless penny stock into a $6 billion giant in just 4 years. 20 minutes into the helicopter flight, the rear door opened, and de Guzman was gone.
Bre-X chief geologist committed suicide by jumping out of a helicopter.
His death came when the Bre-X story was starting to unravel.
The biggest mining fraud in Canadian history.
It just sounds like a big scam.
I think my shares are worthless.
We lost everything.
This is the story of 3 men involved in a financial hysteria where the only thing more dangerous than the lie was the price of uncovering the truth. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to a basement in Calgary, Canada, in the early 1990s, and to a man named David Walsh. Walsh had spent years in the financial industry without much to show for it, at one point filing for personal bankruptcy. His company, Bre-X Minerals, traded at pennies on the Alberta Stock Exchange.
Bre-X was a shell of a company with almost non-existent working capital.
The company's main asset was Walsh's optimism that something would eventually turn up. What turned up was John Velderhof. Velderhof was a Dutch-born Canadian geologist with a rugged, wandering career. He had genuinely helped discover one of the largest gold and copper deposits in Papua New Guinea, which gave him a reputation in the industry that Walsh lacked. In 1993, Velderhof convinced Walsh to spend what little money Bre-X had on the rights to a stretch of jungle along the Busang River in Kalimantan, the Indonesian portion of Borneo. Larger mining companies had already looked at the area and passed. Velderhof believed they made the wrong decision. To run the operation on the ground, he brought in a colleague from a previous venture, Michael de Guzman, a Filipino geologist with an easy manner and a talent for keeping a drilling crew moving in difficult conditions. De Guzman had his own theories about where gold could be found, unconventional theories involving ancient volcanic pools that he believed deposited gold in ways the textbooks hadn't caught up with yet. His colleagues found these ideas eccentric, but they also found him persuasive. The 3 of them, Walsh, Velderhof, and de Guzman, had until December 18, 1993, when the Indonesian exploration license would expire. They drilled 2 holes. Nothing. Then, with days remaining, de Guzman said he knew exactly where to look. The location had come to him, he later told people, in a dream. They drilled a 3rd hole. Gold.
There's gold in them there Indonesian hills, and lots of it, as a matter of fact.
The biggest gold deposit ever found.
This company is going to be known in history as finding one of the, if not the largest gold deposit in the world.
But this was of course later revealed to be a complete fraud. So how could de Guzman have fooled so many people that were viewed as mineral and mining experts?
It's difficult to imagine that all those years of work resulted in nothing.
When a drilling team pulls rock from the earth, the core samples are sent to a laboratory for analysis. But before they get there, the samples pass through many hands, being logged, labeled, and crushed into powder. At each stage, they are in the care of the people who extracted them, with an opportunity to falsify the findings. Gold that was not in the ground can be added to the core samples. A small quantity of gold dust, measured carefully and mixed into crushed rock, will appear in a report exactly as if it had always been there. The practice is called salting. It's as old as the mining industry. De Guzman used realistic concentrations, careful not to overstate. At first, he filed flakes from his own wedding ring. Then, as the drilling accelerated and the quantities required grew, he started buying panned gold from local tribespeople along the nearby rivers. Over roughly 2.5 years, he spent around $61,000 on it. For each round of samples, he introduced the gold, mixed it through, and sent everything off to the lab. The results climbed. 2 million ounces, then 30 million, then 60. Back in Canada, Walsh updated the market with each new estimate. Bre-X's stock, which had traded at pennies in '93, broke at $100 a share, then 200. Then, in the spring of 1996, over 280. The company's market capitalization exceeded 6 billion Canadian dollars.
Mr. Walsh, you are every prospector's, every penny stock promoter's dream come true. Do you have to at times still pinch yourself to believe that you found what you found?
Yes, absolutely. It's been quite an exciting journey over the last 4 years.
With all of this attention on Bre-X, global mining giant Barrick Gold lobbied intensely for the right to develop Busang. Indonesia's president, Suharto, who had run the country as a family enterprise for 3 decades, took notice. His daughter backed a consortium that was bidding for Busang. His son signed a personal deal with Bre-X worth millions a month, simply for navigating Indonesian bureaucracy on their behalf. His close friend, a businessman named Bob Hassan, eventually brokered the arrangement that brought Freeport-McMoRan, the American mining giant, in as the site's operating partner. Bre-X would keep a 45% stake. Indonesian companies and the government would combine to take 40%. Freeport would run the mine and take 15%. The deal was announced in February 1997. Bre-X's share price climbed again, but around the time of the deal, a fire broke out at the Busang site and destroyed the geology office. Years of core sample records burned. It was attributed to an accident, but Freeport needed to conduct its own due diligence before committing fully standard practice for a project of this scale. Their team arrived at Busang in early 1997 and drilled what are called twin holes, holes placed immediately adjacent to Bre-X's existing drill sites to independently verify what lay beneath. It was the first time anyone had checked the results this way, but what they found was almost nothing. Freeport's metallurgist analyzed the samples and concluded the Bre-X results had been falsified. The gold particles in the Busang samples had rounded, smooth edges, characteristic of alluvial gold that had tumbled through rivers for centuries, not the angular fragments you'd expect from a hard rock vein deposit. Someone had introduced gold from another source into the crushed samples. Freeport's report described it, with clinical understatement, as salting. De Guzman was in Toronto when Freeport called. He was at the annual mining conference, the Prospectors and Developers Association convention, where that same week Felderhoff had been named Prospector of the Year.
PDAC applauds John Felderhoff for his truly remarkable and insightful prospecting successes.
By all accounts, De Guzman was in high spirits, telling anyone who'd listen about his plans, his wealth, his future. But he was told to return to Busang immediately to explain the discrepancies. He boarded a helicopter on the morning of March 19th, ultimately plummeting into the jungle below. Within days of De Guzman's disappearance, Freeport released its preliminary findings. Bre-X's stock, which was trading around $14 following a 10-for-1 stock split the previous year, fell to under $3 in hours. $3 billion in market value evaporated in a single session. An independent investigation by Strathcona Mineral Services, released 2 months later, was categorical. The Busang samples had been salted on a massive and sustained scale across hundreds of drill holes over years. Strathcona called it the most elaborate fraud in the history of mining.
I hope it's not true because I have some stuff related to Bre-X.
Well, I don't think he committed suicide, the geologist. That's my theory on that part of it.
The body found in the jungle was identified as De Guzman based on dental records and a thumbprint, though the process was contested. He had 4 wives, some of them simultaneous, and several of them later claimed to have received money from him after his supposed death. Investigators who went back through the final hours noted that his farewell note was described by those who read it as unconvincing.
This guy either committed suicide or, he was pushed out because he might have threatened to say something about it.
I have no comment. You read the press release.
David Walsh, who had maintained throughout that he was as deceived as anyone, moved to the Bahamas after the collapse and died there of a brain aneurysm in 1998. John Felderhoff retreated to the Cayman Islands, which has no extradition treaty with Canada, where he was eventually charged by the Ontario Securities Commission with insider trading. He had sold $84 million worth of Bre-X shares in the months before the collapse. His trial ran for years. In 2007, he was acquitted. He died in Manila in 2019.
The largest fraud in Canadian history goes without any accountability.
40,000 investors held Bre-X shares when the stock collapsed, and nobody was ever charged with the fraud itself. After the collapse, Canada overhauled its disclosure standards entirely, requiring independent verification of core samples at multiple stages. The regulation is now considered among the most rigorous in the world, and it was written specifically because of Bre-X, which means that for the 4 years the fraud ran, the rule that would have stopped it simply didn't exist yet. The Busang site still sits in the jungle of East Kalimantan. No mine was ever built. The roads Bre-X cut through the rainforest have been swallowed back. The drilling equipment was sold for scrap. Whether Michael de Guzman is dead is still not definitively known. Whether John Felderhof knew of the deception is still debated, and whether Walsh was a victim or a participant is a question that died with him, unanswered. What is certain is that somewhere in the jungle along the Busang River, there are drill holes that once convinced the world they contained the largest gold deposit in history, and the gold that was supposedly in them, the gold that moved markets, enriched insiders, and consumed the savings of 40,000 people, came, at least in part, from the wedding rings of a man who understood that the easiest thing to sell to someone who wants to believe is the thing they're already looking for. He just had to keep them from looking too closely.